They trained her in math to kill the poet in her. It created the first programmer. Someone in your life once decided which half of you was the serious half. Maybe it was a parent's face when you said what you wanted to study. Maybe it was a teacher steering you toward the practical thing. Maybe nobody said it out loud and you just absorbed it, that one of your interests was a career and the other one was a hobby, and you should be grateful for the hobby but not confuse it with real life. For most of us, that was a nudge. For Ada Lovelace, it was a decade-long, deliberate, documented program to burn one half of her mind out of existence before it could take root. It didn't work, and what she built instead at the exact seam where the two halves met was so far ahead of everyone around her that the world needed 100 years to understand what she'd written. In the next 10 minutes, I'll show you what she saw that the actual inventor of the machine could not see, the name she gave to her own way of thinking, and why the half of her that everyone was trying to suppress turned out to be the half that mattered. This is episode 5 of History's Pattern Weavers. Leonardo showed us the guilt of the unfinished. Hedy Lamarr showed us the pain of being seen as one thing. Franklin showed us the web instead of the ladder. Ibn Sina showed us that the walls between subjects aren't real. Ada Lovelace shows us what happens when someone tries to amputate one of your threads and you weave with it anyway. Subscribe if you want the rest of the series, and let's get into it. Start with the setup, because it's almost too neat to be true. Her father was Lord Byron, not a poet, the poet, the most famous and most scandalous literary celebrity in Europe. He left about a month after she was born. She never saw him again. He died when she was 8, and she grew up with his portrait in the house, kept behind a curtain. Her mother, Annabella, was mathematically gifted and had her own opinion about what had gone wrong with Byron. She believed his imagination was a kind of disease. Poetic temperament, wild feeling, the whole Byronic package was a madness that ran in the blood, and she was determined it would not take her daughter. So she engineered an education as an antidote. Ada was drilled in mathematics, logic, and science from early childhood, with serious tutors at a time when girls were generally taught almost none of it. Among her teachers were Mary Somerville, one of the great science communicators of the age, and Augustus de Morgan, a formidable logician. Read the intention clearly. The mathematics was not a gift, it was a fence. It was installed specifically to keep the poetry out. And here's the first thing worth noticing, because it's your first mirror. The fence became a thread. Whatever the motive, she now had rigorous training in formal reasoning that almost no one else of her generation and gender possessed. Sometimes the discipline that was forced on you, the practical degree, the sensible career, the thing you did because someone insisted, becomes one of the most valuable threads on your loom, not because they were right to force it, because you get to keep it and use it for your own purposes. Now watch what she did with both halves well before anyone was paying attention. At around 12 years old, she decided she wanted to fly, not as a daydream, as a project. She studied the anatomy of birds, she thought about the proportion of wing to body, she considered materials, paper, oil silk, feathers. She worked on a plan for wings a person could actually use, and she wrote it up in something she called flyology. Look at what that is: biology, engineering, and material science, braided together by a 12-year-old, driven by imagination and executed with rigor. Both halves of her, already working as one system, the mother's mathematics giving structure to the father's flight of fancy. Nobody taught her to do that. It's just what her mind did when left alone. Then, at 17, she met Charles Babbage. Babbage was a brilliant, difficult inventor working on enormous mechanical calculating machines. She saw a demonstration of his difference engine and was captivated, not politely, but seriously. She kept up a correspondence with him for years. He called her, memorably, the Enchantress of Number. Babbage's more ambitious design was the analytical engine, a machine that was never fully built in his lifetime, but which is now recognized as the conceptual ancestor of the modern computer. It had a memory, a processing unit, and it could be fed instructions on punched cards. In the early 1840s, an Italian mathematician published an article describing the machine in French. Ada translated it into English, and then she did something nobody asked her to do. She added her own notes at the end, labeled A through G. Her notes were roughly 3 times longer than the original article. Inside note G is a detailed, step-by-step sequence of operations for the machine to compute a series of numbers called Bernoulli numbers. It is widely regarded as the first published algorithm designed to be executed by a machine, a program written for a computer that did not yet exist. But the algorithm is not actually the most remarkable thing in those notes. This next part is. Babbage, the engineer, saw what he had built, a machine for numbers, a spectacular, revolutionary calculator. Ada saw what it could be. She understood something that genuinely nobody else did at the time. The machine wasn't fundamentally about numbers at all. Numbers were just what it happened to be manipulating. Underneath, it was manipulating symbols according to rules, and if you could represent something else with symbols, the machine could work on that too. And then she gave the example that should raise the hair on your arms. She wrote that if the relationships between pitched sounds could be expressed appropriately, the engine could compose elaborate and complex pieces of music. In the 1840s, about a machine made of brass gears and punched cards that had not been built. She looked at a calculator and saw music. She saw in outline the general-purpose computer, the thing that would eventually run our art, our language, our images, and our songs, roughly a century before it existed. Now ask the question this whole series exists to ask. Why her? Why could she see it when the man who designed the machine could not? She answered it herself. She described her own approach as poetical science. Babbage had the engineering. He had the mathematics. What he did not have was the specific imaginative faculty that asked, what else could this become? That's a poet's question. It's the ability to see a thing not as what it is, but as what it stands for, to treat the world as symbol and metaphor, which is precisely the sensibility her mother spent a decade trying to prevent her from developing. The mathematics let her understand the machine. The poetry let her see past it. Neither half alone gets you to note G. A pure mathematician would have optimized the calculations. A pure poet could never have written the algorithm. The insight lives exactly at the seam, and the seam only existed because the amputation failed. They tried to remove the poet to protect the mathematician. What they accidentally created was the only person in the world who was fluent in both, and therefore the only person who could see what everyone else was standing next to and missing. There is one more part of this story, and it matters more than it might seem. She signed those notes with her initials, AAL, not her name. Publishing under a woman's name in that world carried a cost, and so the most visionary technical document of the century went out into the world half anonymous. She died at 36, and the notes were largely forgotten, not for a decade, for about 100 years. It wasn't until the 1950s, when the first electronic computers were being built and someone republished her work, that people read those notes and realized that a woman writing in the 1840s had described with startling accuracy what the machines now humming in laboratories actually were. She's now honored with a programming language bearing her name and with an International Day of Recognition, all of it arriving more than a century late. So here's what to take with you, and I want to be direct about it because I think a lot of you needed this specific episode. Someone tried to educate one half of Ada Lovelace out of existence. That half turned out to be the half that made her immortal. If somebody in your life decided which of your interests was the serious one, and you have spent years treating the other one as an indulgence, a distraction, a childish thing you should have outgrown, I want you to consider the possibility that they got it exactly backwards. That the interest you were told to drop is not the frivolous half of you. It might be the half that lets you see what the specialist standing right next to the thing cannot see. Keep both. Weave with both. The seam between them is where you'll do the only work that nobody else on Earth could have done. Next time in the series, we go back to the 12th century, to a woman who had no permission at all, no institution behind her, no right to speak publicly, no path to authority of any kind. And she became a composer whose music is still recorded today, a writer on medicine and the natural world, a playwright and an advisor whose letters kings and popes actually answered, Hildegard of Bingen. And what to do when nobody has given you permission to be what you are. Before you go, tell me in the comments, which half of you did someone try to talk you out of? Name the interest you were told wasn't serious. I suspect this comment section is going to be full of people who abandoned the exact thread that would have made them irreplaceable, and I'd like us all to see it written down. Thanks for watching. Now go pick the other half back up.